What if I told you that one of the most powerful figures of the Renaissance, a man ostensibly chosen by God to lead the Catholic Church, used his divine influence not for spiritual guidance, but to commit actions so morally bankrupt they defy imagination? Imagine a pontiff so consumed by ambition and carnal desires that he allegedly orchestrated incest within his own family, raising his daughter not with paternal love, but as a pawn, coercing her into perverse acts with both himself and her brother. This is not a work of fiction, but the chilling, dark, and utterly tragic story of Lucrezia Borgia, a name that for centuries has been synonymous with scandal, whispered in the same breath as poison and unnatural lust. This is a tale of power pushed to its most grotesque extreme, manipulation so profound it shattered lives, and corruption that seeped into the very foundations of the most sacred institutions of its time. It echoes through history, an enduring testament to the sinister depths that can lurk behind the gilded facades of Renaissance nobility and the unholy alliances forged in the pursuit of absolute control. Forget the romanticized notions of art and enlightenment. We're about to journey into the shadows where human depravity casts its longest, darkest silhouette. In this video, we promise to pull back the curtain on one of history's most infamous families, the Borgias, exposing a web of betrayal so intricate, so repulsive, that it continues to haunt our collective conscience centuries later. We will explore the historical whispers, the debated evidence, and the enduring legacy of a family whose name has become a byword for shocking immorality. Prepare to delve into the heart of an era where splendor and depravity walked hand in hand, and where the lines between political maneuver, personal vice, and sheer terror became inextricably blurred. This is not just a story of a powerful family. It is a profound and disturbing examination of what happens when unchecked power collides with human frailty, leaving a trail of destruction and unanswered questions that resonate even today. Our journey into this dark history begins not in some forgotten catacomb, but in the heart of Renaissance Italy, specifically Rome, at the close of the 15th century and the dawn of the 16th. This was an era of breathtaking artistic and intellectual splendor, giving birth to masterpieces that still define our understanding of beauty and human potential. Yet, beneath this veneer of cultural brilliance, a profound and brutal chaos simmered. It was a time when power was not inherited peacefully or earned through democratic means, but seized through cunning, ruthlessness, and often rivers of blood and treachery. Standing at the epicenter of this tumultuous period were not just kingdoms and duchies, but the Papal States, a vast temporal domain under the direct rule of the Catholic Church. Rome, the Eternal City, was far more than a spiritual capital. It was a political battlefield where cardinals and popes jockeyed for power with the same ferocity as any monarch. The spiritual authority of the Church was immense, but so too was its political influence, extending its reach across Europe. This made the papacy an irresistible prize for ambitious men, and the Borgias, among others, understood this intrinsically. Noble families throughout Italy, and indeed across the continent, were locked in a relentless struggle for dominance. Their arsenals included not only armies and mercenaries, but also the insidious weapons of political marriage, espionage, and devastating scandal. Alliances were forged and shattered with dizzying speed, often cemented by marriages that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with territory, wealth, and strategic advantage. Reputation could make or break a family, yet sometimes a family's very notoriety could be a source of perverse power, striking fear into the hearts of their rivals. It was into this volatile crucible of ambition and shifting loyalties that the Borgia family, originally from Valencia, Spain, catapulted themselves. They arrived in Italy not as minor nobility, but as a family with an insatiable hunger for prestige and influence, perfectly poised to exploit the cutthroat political landscape. Their rise was meteoric and controversial, marked by a blend of undeniable charisma and Machiavellian strategizing. They understood that in this era, the cross and the sword were often wielded by the same hand, and that control over the spiritual meant unparalleled temporal power. The stage was set for a drama of epic proportions, not merely within the hallowed halls of the Vatican or the opulent palaces of Roman nobility, but within the very core of a family whose name would become synonymous with the darkest aspects of the Renaissance. In this turbulent world of Renaissance Italy, where the pursuit of power transcended morality, three figures stood at the dark heart of the Borgia saga, their lives inextricably intertwined in a web of ambition, indulgence, and unspeakable acts. At the apex stood Rodrigo Borgia, later known to the world as Pope Alexander VI. Born into a prominent Spanish family, Rodrigo was a man of immense charm, intelligence, and a seemingly insatiable appetite for power. His rise through the church hierarchy was meteoric, fueled by shrewd political maneuvering, strategic alliances, and a ruthless pragmatism that knew no bounds. He was notoriously corrupt, openly flaunting his numerous mistresses and fathering several illegitimate children, a scandalous rarity for a clergyman, let alone a man who would become the vicar of Christ. His papacy, spanning from 1492 to 1503, was a period marked by unprecedented decadence, political manipulation, and ceaseless efforts to aggrandize his family's position, often at the expense of established moral and ecclesiastical norms. He was, in essence, a secular prince cloaked in spiritual vestments. Then there was Lucrezia Borgia. Often portrayed as a femme fatale, a poisonous seductress, or a willing participant in her family's dark deeds, historical accounts suggest a far more complex and tragic figure. She was Rodrigo's beloved daughter, celebrated for her beauty and intelligence, yet her life unfolded as a relentless series of forced marriages, each designed to advance her father's political agenda. From a very young age, she was a pawn in a terrifying game of thrones, her innocence and personal desires brutally subsumed by the Borgia family's insatiable quest for dominion. The whispers of incest surrounding Lucrezia are central to her dark legend, presenting her not as a conniving participant, but as a victim caught in an agonizing bind, coerced into unspeakable acts that served the perverse ends of her powerful male relatives. Her life was a crucible of emotional trauma and betrayal, a gilded cage adorned with the trappings of power but devoid of genuine freedom. Completing this unholy trinity was Cesare Borgia, Lucrezia's older brother, and arguably the most formidable and terrifying of the trio. Trained as a cardinal, Cesare quickly shared his ecclesiastical robes to pursue a military career, becoming his father's chief enforcer and the architect of the Borgia family's territorial expansion. His ambition was boundless, his methods brutal, and his alleged involvement in the darkest aspects of the Borgia legend, including fratricide and, crucially, incestuous relationships with his sister Lucrezia, paint him as a predator, a man who saw his family, even his own sister, as mere instruments to achieve his grandiose political and personal aims. The dynamics within this family were a volatile mix of fervent loyalty and savage betrayal. While they presented a united front to the world, internally, the thirst for power led to constant maneuvering, strategic marriages, and a pervasive culture of suspicion and backstabbing. The bond between Rodrigo, Lucrezia, and Cesare was not one of conventional familial affection, but rather a grotesque parody, where love was intertwined with manipulation, and familial ties were stretched to their absolute breaking point by the relentless pursuit of ultimate power and personal gratification. It is within the confines of this dysfunctional yet immensely powerful family that the most shocking and enduring allegations against the Borgias take root. The whispers of incest. For centuries, accusations have been leveled against Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, of forcing incestuous relationships upon his own daughter, Lucrezia. The rumors painted a horrifying picture, that he did not just neglect her welfare, but actively cultivated her, raising her not as a beloved child, but as a political and personal instrument, grooming her for perverse acts intended to serve his insatiable lust and his Machiavellian political ends. These were not mere casual slanders. They were widespread and detailed, spoken with conviction by contemporaries both friendly and hostile to the Borgias. More disturbing still are the claims that Lucrezia was not only coerced into incestuous acts with her father, but also with her formidable and ruthless brother Cesare. This alleged triangular dynamic adds another layer of horror to an already repulsive narrative. The intent, according to these dark whispers, was multifaceted: to demonstrate absolute patriarchal control, to bind the family through unholy pacts that deepened their shared secrets, and perhaps to facilitate certain political maneuvers through the absolute subjugation of Lucrezia's will and body. Lucrezia's life, even stripped of these darkest allegations, was undeniably tragic. Her innocence was sacrificed on the altar of her family's ambition. From a tender age, she was subjected to a series of forced marriages, each alliance carefully brokered by her father and brother to consolidate their power, expand their territories, or eliminate political rivals. Her first marriage was annulled under dubious circumstances, allowing her father to marry her off to a new, more politically advantageous suitor. When that husband became an impediment to Cesare's plans, he was murdered, freeing Lucrezia for yet another strategic union. This relentless cycle of being a human commodity, traded and discarded at her family's whim, inflicted immeasurable emotional trauma. The dark rumors of her being used as a tool to solidify alliances, not just through marriage, but through more intimate, forbidden means, suggest a depth of exploitation that is truly chilling. The sources for these disturbing allegations are varied and complex, contributing to the ongoing historical debate. Contemporary accounts, including letters from diplomats, chroniclers, and even rival families, are rife with insinuations and outright accusations of incestuous relationships within the Borgia hierarchy. While some of these might be dismissed as propaganda from their numerous enemies, the sheer volume and consistency of these allegations, particularly regarding the bacchanalian revels held in the papal apartments, make them difficult to ignore. Artifacts from the period, while not directly proving incest, reflect the Borgias' opulent and often morally lax lifestyle, lending credence to the idea that boundaries were frequently blurred. Portraits of Lucrezia, often depicting a beautiful yet somber expression, offer faint, almost imperceptible clues to her suffering, a silent testament to a life lived under an almost unbearable burden of family secrets and public scrutiny. For centuries, the allegations of incest surrounding the Borgia family, specifically involving Pope Alexander VI, Lucrezia, and Cesare, remained largely in the realm of sensational gossip and counter-propaganda. However, the rigorous methodology of modern historical investigation has allowed scholars to delve deeper into archives, letters, and documents from the late 15th and early 16th centuries, seeking to separate fact from fiction. This tireless work reveals a disturbing truth that, while not always providing definitive proof in the way a modern court might demand, paints a compelling if ambiguous picture of widespread depravity. Historians and researchers have meticulously combed through diplomatic correspondence, personal letters of Borgia family members and their contemporaries, papal records, and court accounts. These primary sources, once dusty and forgotten, now yield tantalizing clues. For instance, reports from foreign ambassadors stationed in Rome often contained detailed and sometimes horrified observations of events within the papal court. Venetian and Florentine envoys, known for their elaborate and often unflattering dispatches, frequently relayed rumors of the Pope's licentiousness and the impropriety surrounding Lucrezia. While these accounts cannot be taken as incontrovertible proof, the frequency and consistency of the incest allegations across multiple independent sources raise serious questions. One of the most infamous pieces of evidence comes from the letter to the King of Spain by the historian Guicciardini, which openly speculated on the nature of the Pope's relationship with Lucrezia. Furthermore, the notorious Banquet of Chestnuts incident of 1501, documented by the papal master of ceremonies Johann Burchard in his Liber Notarum, describes a lavish and scandalous evening held in the Apostolic Palace where 50 prostitutes entertained the Pope, Cesare, and Lucrezia, engaging in highly suggestive acts. While incest is not explicitly stated, the context and attendees, including Lucrezia, raise very uncomfortable questions about the moral climate and the nature of the relationships within the papal household. Burchard's record is particularly controversial, with some historians arguing it was exaggerated or fabricated, while others see it as a horrifying glimpse into Borgia excesses. The challenge, however, lies in disentangling genuine insights from the pervasive impact of contemporary gossip and slander. The Borgias had a prodigious number of enemies, rival noble families, disgruntled cardinals, and foreign powers who saw them as a grave threat. These adversaries were quick to exploit any opportunity to discredit the family, and moral depravity was a potent weapon in the political arena. Rumors could be manufactured or exaggerated to demonize the Borgias, to tarnish their reputation, and ultimately to undermine their power. Therefore, historians must meticulously cross-reference sources, analyze the motivations of the writers, and assess the broader political context in which these allegations emerged. Yet, even after accounting for propaganda, a deeply disturbing undercurrent persists. The sheer audacity of the Borgias, their open disregard for traditional morality, and their relentless pursuit of power created an environment where such dark acts, if not outright proven, were certainly considered plausible by many at the time. The very existence of such widespread and persistent rumors hints at a deeply problematic reality behind the Vatican walls. The historical investigation into the Borgia family, however painstaking, ultimately reveals that Lucrezia Borgia's life was undeniably shaped by profound trauma and manipulation, regardless of the definitive truth of the incest allegations. Her psychological torment, a consequence of being a political pawn, was immense. From her preteen years, she was bartered, married, divorced, and remarried, her affections and body never truly her own. Each strategic alliance meant leaving behind familiar faces and adapting to new, often hostile, environments. When her second husband, Alfonso of Aragon, was murdered, almost certainly at Cesare's command, to clear the way for a more advantageous match with Alfonso I d'Este, Duke of Ferrara, Lucrezia was left a widow, potentially carrying the secret knowledge of her brother's ruthlessness. This consistent use and discarding by her male relatives undoubtedly inflicted deep emotional scars, a crushing weight of powerlessness. Despite this oppressive environment, Lucrezia, particularly in the latter part of her life, displayed remarkable resilience and an attempt to carve out a measure of agency. Her final marriage to Alfonso I d'Este, Duke of Ferrara, while another political maneuver, eventually led her to a more stable and respected position. As the Duchess of Ferrara, she blossomed, becoming a patron of the arts and a competent administrator, earning the genuine affection and respect of her subjects. It was as if, finally stepping out from under the direct, suffocating shadow of her father and brother, she could breathe and demonstrate her innate intellect and grace. However, even this period of relative tranquility could not erase the historical stain of her family name or the personal anguish of her past. The Borgia family, in turn, cemented their influence not just through power, but through an enduring infamy. They became symbols of unchecked corruption, rampant decadence, and moral darkness that permeated the highest echelons of both temporal and spiritual authority. Their story became a cautionary tale, a narrative used to illustrate the dangers of absolute power and the lengths to which individuals would go to acquire and maintain it. This legacy profoundly colored perceptions of the Catholic Church's moral authority for centuries, fueling the calls for reform that would eventually erupt into the Protestant Reformation. If the papacy, supposedly the moral beacon of Christendom, could harbor such depravity, then what hope was there for spiritual purity? In contemporary times, the debate surrounding Lucrezia Borgia, and the Borgia family as a whole, continues unabated among historians. Was Lucrezia a willing participant, a manipulative co-conspirator in her family's dark deeds, or primarily a tragic victim of circumstances beyond her control? The prevailing scholarly consensus now leans heavily towards portraying her as a victim, manipulated and exploited by powerful forces rather than an active agent of evil. Yet, the myth of her as a poisoner and seductress continues to dominate popular culture, a testament to the enduring power of sensationalism over nuanced historical understanding. Ultimately, the Borgia story serves as a potent and dark symbolism about the corrupting influence of power. It illustrates how the relentless pursuit of political and personal gain can warp human relationships, erode moral boundaries, and leave a trail of psychological devastation. As we draw this dark tale to a close, a horrifying possibility, one that has echoed through centuries, looms large: that a pope, the spiritual leader of millions, used his own children as pawns in a macabre game of incestuous gratification and ruthless political manipulation. Rodrigo Borgia, Pope Alexander VI, transcended the boundaries of both religious doctrine and human decency, allegedly leveraging his paternal authority and his sacred office to coerce his daughter, Lucrezia, into unspeakable acts, potentially with both himself and her brother, Cesare. This is a chilling thought, staining the very fabric of history with its implications. Even if definitive, irrefutable proof remains elusive, the sheer volume and persistence of the accusations, from contemporary accounts to modern historical analysis, paint a disturbing portrait of a family consumed by ambition and moral decay. Lucrezia Borgia's life, when peeled back layer by layer, emerges as a profound tragedy. She was, in essence, a sacrifice. Her innocence, her well-being, and her fundamental human rights were crushed beneath the relentless greed, boundless lust, and unbridled ambition of her father and brother. She was born into a destiny she could not escape, a beautiful, intelligent girl forced into a series of political marriages, her body and alliances bartered for power. Each decision, each forced union, ripped away another piece of her autonomy, leaving her a victim of her lineage. The psychological torment she must have endured, the secrets she carried, and the public scrutiny she faced are almost unimaginable. Hers was a life lived in a gilded cage, surrounded by opulence and danger, forever entwined with a family whose name would become synonymous with the darkest aspects of the Renaissance. This grim journey through the Borgia saga serves as a profound and uncomfortable reminder of history's most corrosive and insidious forces, the corrupting effects of absolute power. When power is unchecked, when moral boundaries are not just blurred but actively obliterated, the human cost can be catastrophic. The story of the Borgias underlines how easily individuals, even those ostensibly dedicated to spiritual guidance, can succumb to their basest desires, transforming familial bonds into instruments of depravity and control. The suffering caused by such unchecked ambition, particularly the suffering that unfolds behind closed doors, away from public view, but echoing through generations, is a stark warning. It compels us to remember that history is not just a collection of dates and events, but a tapestry woven with human experience, joy, and profound, heartbreaking anguish. If you found this story as chilling and revealing as I did, if the shadows of the past still hold secrets you wish to uncover, then I urge you to delve deeper. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more explorations into the dark truths of history, and join our community as we continue to shine a light on the hidden corners of our shared past.